Hey kids, welcome to Breakfast Poetry Live. It's April 27th, 2023. There's my Frankenstein monster mug from Halloween. I got a whole, I think, box of mugs I can't find in the basement, and I found my Halloween ones though. It's too many mugs. Should probably get rid of some. Anyway, welcome to Breakfast Poetry Live. As I've said, it's Wednesday. I said it again. And we're going to begin with weird works that I just had and then put somewhere clever. Here they are. Okay. I write scrawls with my hand and the night files in all that is outlandish and off-center in the high voices of children in the old films seen at school when jelly shoes and bracelets were the rule. Thank you. Weird works. For April 27th. Next, fun with the word. What did I say yesterday? I said propinquity. It's propinquity. So I was looking up propinquity by spelling it propinquity and thought, oh my gosh, it should have been my first clue when I stumped the OED, the Oxford English Dictionary database. But you know what? Come to think of it, that just shows you how stodgy the OED is if it's not going to suggest, hey, didn't you mean this, young friend, old friend, middle-aged friend who just wanted the word iniquity in there for some reason just because it means nearness? I don't know. Anyway, propinquity. I even had it spelled correctly on the slip, but my mind still said, screamed, shouted, propinquity. It's propinquity, but I do have a poem about it. I didn't get that far gone. Okay. I have to put my glasses on because it's a little. Propinquity, nearly. Let us begin again. I'm distracted by my poetry trivia as well. Make sure I know what that is. Propinquity, nearness of blood, your skin, your kinship, your kindship, to climb into your sweater at night while you are wearing it. To say it all out loud without the sick lightning afterward. The end. Propinquity. That was a new word for me. I have a couple of poetry trivias here before we draw a new beautiful word, which I'm going to put right here so I don't forget, because I might. Okie dokie. Poetry trivia question. What poet and wit's epitaph reads, when I am dead, I hope it may be said, his sins were scarlet, but his books were red. The answer is Hilaire Belloc. I used to be big into Hilaire Belloc when I was like in my 20s and I worked at the public library. Same system I work at now, but a different location. And I was like 22 when I got that job. And it was children's programming specialist or something like that, or children's specialist. I forget what it was. It was the kind of job where I had several classes in elementary ed in college and really enjoyed it. But like, and there were all these reasons why I was like, part of it was college is expensive. And when I just sat down and counted up my hours one day, I could graduate in like a semester if I just changed my major to German. So I did that. Also, I think the technology was kind of overwhelming to me at the time. It was a lot of heady change in technology and I was wussing out. But anyway, I used to go to this. So anyway, I took this job because I was like, well, gosh, I got student loans to pay back. Yes, I can do anything that you want me to do within reason, library wise. And it was, you know, kids, and it was really fun. And I got to read to them at the schools, and Hilaire Belloc was a very, very funny poetry writer. Can't remember if he actually wrote for kids or if I just got that mixed up in my mind. I'm going to have to explore that and hopefully get back to you. Let's draw a beautiful word for tomorrow. This poem. Libby. Plethora. Like myriad, but plethora, meaning similar. Lots of options. Okay, so that's the beautiful word for today. And may I announce that I did do a new block yesterday. This is just an extra on Perry Mason. That was one of my favorite things to do for between 8 and 9 in the morning. Oh, probably the years 2018, 2019, something like that. When I was doing a lot of helping my dad with stuff. So I kind of had a flexible schedule, and Perry Mason was on every morning at 8 and I would watch it and look out for awesome hats and awesome jewelry and awesome coffee services. That was just and DeForest Kelley. So anyway, there's a hat. It's a furry hat with beads. Oh, and this little old gal is on the witness stand. So we will emblazon her hat since she took the trouble to show up and testify with a Poetry Hats phrase. We're getting down to 4 days, and I'm like, I have to pull the great ones. I don't know what they are. They're random. What did you... Oh, gosh, this is perfect. Look at her face, okay? Okay, I'm going to show you her face again. Suspense, right? What did you do? Grow old and more beautiful? I think you did, honey. Okay, so that will be our phrase on the Poetry Hat for today. Let me put that with the word plethora so I don't lose them when I get to it after this. Well, we are down to 4 days left in National Poetry Month, and I have vowed to do some little readings from my own works that are available on Amazon. And I did not put the thing in the thing this time in the show notes or whatever you call it in the description. Forgot to put the email address, but it's in yesterday's, and maybe I'll put it in a comment later. I don't know. Maybe I can edit it. I don't know. The world is so full of a number of things, etc. Okay, Transfusion Poetica is the one for today. Like I said in the podcast, I almost said like I said, but it was on the podcast. It's the poetry textbook, if you don't mind a little bit of swearing, right? Okay, so if you're a teacher, just bear that in mind, right? I'm going to read the flip. I'm going to read the original poem and its flip. This book, I will briefly say, is divided into sections. I'm going to read what they are. Tactics, dreams, forms, and forms that, I made up with Angela Eureka Smith or on my own. Moods, objects, muses, and illuminators, list of illustrations. So it kind of goes through that and gives you some ideas for how poetry can be born, right? If you're interested in any sort of like, well, this is how one or two people do it, because sometimes I tell what Angela and I have done. Sometimes I tell what I have done. And so if you're interested in writing poetry of your own, this could be inspiring to you. I know everybody's different and everything's not for everyone, but this, for me, was so much fun to write and kind of explore how poems and poetry that I've done have just come alive and how I put myself in the mindset and stuff like that. And anyway, Friday the 13th is going to be the first poem that I read, and then right underneath it is Friday the 13th 2, the flip. Here we go. Friday the 13th. Life is aching me, Marnie. Coffee overload, cake overlord, a pictorial history of sea monsters. Rain inside and out. One mouse expires. In another life, perhaps the lad in jackboots would offer me a cigarette. Friday the 13th 2, the flip. Death soothes me, Sean Connery, or whatever your dear character's name was. Mushroom elixir deficit, broccoli peasant. What is the opposite of a pictorial history of sea monsters? Calculus textbook? Essays on sky babies? Sunbeams outside and in. A fleet of colossal squid revives. On this precise celestial plane, certainly the lad in jackboots would deny me a glass of wheatgrass juice. The end. So if you couldn't tell, and if I didn't say it, which I might not have, wrote a poem. Friday the 13th, life is aching me, Marnie. There's a line in the movie Marnie where my leg is aching me. You're aching my leg, Marnie. And so life was aching me, Marnie. Take every line of the poem that you have just created and then write its opposite. And that was what was intended with Friday the 13th 2, the flip. Thank you for listening. I will move forward to what was to me a compelling bit of inspiration that I will discuss in a moment. Didn't see if I need to turn the page. Yes, I do. In a poem called Want Ad, No Poets. 1-bedroom apartment, all utilities included, no poets, no smoking, said the ad in the paper. Do we always get drunk on payday? Under contractual obligation? Is that why they object to us? Ebrium cum poetica. Drunk with poetry. I calculate the level of difficulty in hiding my poet identity. New hat? Pose as florist? Is the muse visible on my neck? Can they detect the aroma of amorous? Is that a code? No poets? Is the code previously arranged? Watch for my code in the want ads after the bank heist. No poets. Then meet me in Cincinnati. Pronto. Is this reverse psychology? Is the lodger secretly oozing desire to bask casually in poetry, but doesn't dare say so? All the while knowing prohibition will arouse the poet's subversion? Or was it a typo the whole time? No pets, no smoking. And if so, does that enhance the story's hilarity or make it unbearable by comparison? Grateful acknowledgement to Jim R. Hill for the found prompt. Jim Hill, friend of the poetry live streams we've done in the past, Angela and I, always sending us poetry to read at times. Sent like this old scrap of a want ad that, honest to goodness, was like utilities included, no poets, no smoking. And that was, I want to say it was okay in my romantic mind, it was last year National Poetry Month. It might not have been, but it might have been. I was writing the poem while I was picking my kid up from a scout meeting, so it wasn't like school was not in session, I don't think. Anyway, I mean, I was just like absolutely riding a high while I was writing that poem, and I was trying to make it come out like in the way I wanted it to. And I ended up like, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to write the phrases I want to use, and then I'm going to jumble them in different ways and see. And then while I was doing that, it occurred to me that it might have been a typo. And I was actually quite heartbroken by that idea. It had to be someone insisting on no poets. I don't know what town this was in. I mean, maybe it was Greenwich Village, but what are you doing in Greenwich Village if you don't want to be roommates with a poet? So that's on them. So that was such a blessing, Jim. Thank you for sending that prompt. Hallelujah. I have one left to read, and I feel like I've read this one many, many places, but it kind of sums up my whole muse obsession, called Sky Over Grotto. You've heard it before. Whirling on the sky of night and wheeling on a blurred moonlight the songs of the universe. Windows open to the heat, my ear of mind, sleep drunk and sweet, and in slip slips of verse. I am present, weary soft, and muses flit around aloft, and primed am I to greet them. They gift their medleys jeweled and crowned, recite, and scribble down, for they will not repeat them. The end. Sky Over Grotto. And I have one little last thing to show, and that is that this book does contain my Dream Whip studies. That's not unsettling, right? Dream Whip. I get obsessed with packaged food sometimes just because of, I don't know, weird history and stuff. Anyway, thank you for listening to those poems. Sky Over Grotto, I just will never forget the night I wrote it. I was alone because I think it must have been Scout Camp week, and I was doing my self-poetry camp week and sleeping with the windows open, which I don't always get to do. And it just... I came to believe in that moment that like the music, do you remember in certain television showings of like versions of A Christmas Carol and Scrooge and stuff, how they look out the window, Jacob Marley shows them out the window and you can see all the ghosts flying around and they're in misery. But in this situation, I became convinced that there were muses of all kinds flying around just waiting for someone to be present and weary soft and take it in and write it down. And so I over romanticize everything in the whole world, or I have some sort of insight into something that the human mind has lost its ability to see, or eyes. So that's how, it's like, what's the definitive? Like, what, I'm going to say that doesn't happen? I don't know. I'm just some chick in Missouri. What do I know? I think it happens. Something happens. And recite and scribble down is something Angela and I would always say, because it's like you get an idea in the middle of the night and by God, write it down because it's going to be gone. Have you ever done that? Have you ever had an idea in the middle of the night and it was like so clear and so right, and you were like, oh, I'm just going to repeat it in my head a few times and I will not forget it. And then you fall back to sleep for an hour because it was like 5 a.m. and it's gone. It was smoke. I have learned that lesson so many times, but you mustn't be like tragified if that happens, because something else will come along. So that is my encouragement for today. Thank you for showing up. I've got to no, I did not do the poetry. I've got my Post-its here. I did not do the poetry bingo montage yet so that you could see it on YouTube. I will do my damnedest to do that today. Funky boss, get off my back. And I need to do the Papyrus Author poetry hats, get that going so that it can go together as quickly as possible on the last day of National Poetry Month, which is Sunday. and I got to mow the lawn. The front yard. The front yard's my job. You know why? Because I'm growing strawberries, raspberries, blackberries, sage, all kinds of herbs, blueberries. I'm the only one who is trusted. What's that? Hyssop. I've got hyssop out there. Don't mow over my hyssop. So I'm going to mow it myself. All right. While listening to some sort of podcast. Well, I hope you have a fabulous Thursday and that you get some poetry in there. You just did. What am I talking about? But you know what? Give it a whack. Check out Transfusion Poetica at Amazon. You can get a Kindle edition. It's cheaper. Or you can have the paperback that does not smell like really anything. But I love smell. Oh, there is. Okay, look, I'm going to entice you with one last thing. The Nick Cave banana. They tell you about how I used to draw banana. My kid went to a public high school for a year and a half. And then he's like, no, I think I'm going to do this online or something. But for the first few days, I was compelled to write or to draw on his bananas. And that's Nick Cave. And he hates Nick Cave. He hates Nick Cave because of his mascara tears. I think he hates him less than he used to. I think he had strong feelings because he was, it was COVID and he was going to high school. And anyway, it was very embarrassing apparently after 3 or 4 days of bananas that I drew on. And so he asked me to stop. So I did. I respected that. And I quit drawing post-punk and cartoon people on his bananas and Klaus Forman. All right. Well, have an excellent day. As I've said before, it really is time to go. See you next time.